Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello dear students and viewers. I, Jai Jivani, welcome you at our Chaitanya studio, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Today we are going to start a new series which is a part of our MS Semester 1 on History of English Literature. And for that we are having a Professor Saurabh Vaishnav with us. He is heading the Department of English at St. Xavier's College, Ahmedabad. He has been teaching for more than a decade and his PhD is on Indian aesthetics. We welcome you at our studio, sir. Today he'll be talking on Introduction to Elizabethan, sir. For that, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jivani sir, for this generous introduction. I feel privileged to be invited by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. I will be giving a brief overview of the Elizabethan age. I will try to give some information about the political conditions during the Elizabethan age, the social conditions during the Elizabethan age, and also a little about the religious conditions during the Elizabethan age. Beginning with the history of England. I have tried to incorporate information from 54 BC till the end of the Elizabethan age. Julius Caesar, he invaded what presently we call the place as England in 54-55 BC. And for hundreds of years, what we now know as England, it was a Roman province and it was known as Britannia. The Romans, they later gave up the province, and after the Romans left, that is around 410 AD, England was settled by waves, several tribes of Germanic people, basically known as the Anglo-Saxons. From 1793, a brute tribe from Germany, that is the Vikings, they raided England. In 1066, the Norman conquest of England took place. King William, who ruled the place known as Normandy, he invaded England and became the King of England. This conquest, the Norman conquest, it linked England more closely with the other nations of Europe. Slowly and gradually, it created one of the most powerful monarchies in Europe. The Norman conquest changed the English language and also the English culture. Let us see which were the various royal houses that ruled England beginning from 880 AD. So from 880 to 1013 AD, the House of Wessex ruled England. Now, as we can see, later on from 1013 to 1014, roughly a couple of years, the House of Denmark, it ruled England. Again, there is this back and forth between the House of Wessex and the House of Denmark. Again, in 1014 till 1016, the House of Wessex ruled England. From 1016 to 1042, it's again back to the House of Denmark. From 1042 to 1066, House of Wessex. And as I just mentioned earlier, in the year of 1066, the Norman conquest of England took place. So now, from 1066 till 1135, the House of Normandy, they ruled England. From 1135 till 1154, the House of Blois, they ruled England. From 1154 till 1485, the House of Plantagenet, they ruled England. Now, the House of Plantagenet also contained these two houses. There was this bifurcation of two houses, that is the House of Lancaster and the House of York. House of Lancaster, it ruled England from 1399 till 1461, and the House of York, it ruled England from 1461 till 1485. Next comes the most important age, that is the House of Tudors. Now, this particular house, all the monarchs belonging to this house, they ruled from 1485 till 1603. Queen Elizabeth I, she belonged to the House of Tudor. And after her death in 1603, the House of Stuarts, they ruled England from 1603 till 1649. Now let us take a look at the political and religious conditions of England during the Elizabethan age, and not only during the Elizabethan age, a couple of centuries also. So from 1337 to 1453, the 100 Years' War took place. Roughly 100 Years' War. Now this war was fought between England and France over the succession of the French throne. Gradually, English monarchs were becoming powerful, and we can also say that this is the start of colonization or imperialism. Then from 1455 till 1487, the Wars of the Roses, they took place. Now, what is this Wars of the Roses? As I mentioned earlier, that the House of Plantagenet contained two houses, Lancaster and York. Now, the fight, the violence that took place between these two houses, between Lancaster and York, they represented different roses, which is why this war is also known as the War of the Roses. This war primarily happened to rule the Kingdom of England. In 1485, the Tudor dynasty came to power in England with Henry VII. Henry VII was a monarch of England from 1485 till 1509. Now, naturally, after his death, his son Henry VIII took over the reign of England, and he ruled England from 1509 till 1547. Henry VIII was a volatile person. History books mention that he was a cruel person, had also performed several atrocities at that time. So he was a cruel king at that time. He was obsessed for a son, because as we are all aware that after the king dies, the monarchy then passes over to the son, and he was obsessed to have a son. Now, because of his obsession, what eventually happened was that he married 6 times, because every time he got married, and unfortunately his wife was not able to bore him a son. So he was highly obsessed to have a son, and his first wife, whose name was Catherine of Aragon, she could not bore him a son. So Henry VIII decided that he is going to cancel his marriage, he is going to annul his marriage, he is going to divorce his wife. Now at that time, divorce, cancellation of marriage was not into the hands of anyone. The power of matrimony and the power of separation was bestowed by the church, which is why the Pope, that is a Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, absolutely refused to cancel his marriage with Catherine of Aragon. So Henry VIII decided that the church could not be allowed to have powers over the monarch of England. So he was hell-bent to have a son, and he wanted to cancel his marriage so that he can marry someone else. He ended the role of the Catholic Church, and he declared that the king would be the supreme, not only the political ruler of England, but also the spiritual ruler of England. Meaning, Pope or the Church will not have any power on monarchy. He brought the Church of England closer to Protestantism. Now, mind you that when it comes to the politics of England, religion is also very intimately related to the politics of England. And because the Catholic Church absolutely refused to accept his cancellation of marriage, he decided to go and support Protestantism. So he brought the Church of England closer to Protestantism, which began with Martin Luther King in 1517 in Germany. Now he had 3 children, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. During Edward VI's reign, which is from 1547 till 1553, Protestantism became the official religion of England. We are going to see that as and how the monarchy changes. Some monarchs might support Catholicism, some monarchs might support Protestantism. Edward VI supported Protestantism, which is why he made Protestantism the official religion of England. Now, after Edward VI, Mary I, she came to power. She ruled hardly for just 5 years, that is from 1553 till 1558. And she was determined to restore England back to Catholicism. We are all aware that Edward VI supported Protestantism, whereas the next monarch, Mary I, she supported Catholicism. What did she do? Equally violent and equally cruel, she had many Protestants burnt at the stake. History indicates that somewhere around 284 people were burnt at stake, which included 56 women. All these people, they refused to accept Catholicism. They refused they refused to accept Catholicism, which is why she had them burned at stake. Which is why, because of this, to this day, she is also referred as Bloody Mary. After Mary I, Elizabeth I became the monarch of England, and she ruled England from 1558 till 1603. So these are the exact years that we can consider as Elizabethan age, 1558 till 1603. She gave stability to England. She was aware about the religious problems that England was going through, which is why the religious quotient, that is Catholicism or Protestantism, she tried to solve that problem. The religious quotient had divided the country since Henry VIII, and it was put to rest by the Elizabethan religious settlement. Now, what is this Elizabethan religious settlement? There were 2 points regarding Elizabethan religious settlement, and I'll come to those 2 points later on, which is supremacy and uniformity. The Parliament of England passed both these acts in 1559. What is the Act of Supremacy? The Act of Supremacy means that the reign of England, not only England but also the Church of England, should be on the monarch. So the monarch should have a complete control of the Church of England, that is Queen Elizabeth. So that is the Act of Supremacy. Next is the Act of Uniformity. Now this act is a form of worship, meaning that there were several rules and regulations which were passed at that time, which made church services compulsory. Church attendance also compulsory. Slowly and gradually, after this Elizabethan religious settlement, a new church, that is the Anglican Church of England, was established. It was established in 1559 at Canterbury, with Matthew Parker consecrated as the first Archbishop of Canterbury. Queen Elizabeth and Matthew Parker, they drew on the aspects of Catholicism as well as Protestantism, and both of them opposed religious extremism. They avoided extreme practices and beliefs of both Protestantism and Catholicism. So Anglicanism was more like a little more neutral as compared to the extreme sides of Catholicism and Protestantism. Queen Elizabeth did not marry, hence she did not have any children. Now after her death in 1603, next comes the House of Stuarts. And after her death, James VI, who was the great-great-grandson of Henry VII, and he was also the cousin of Queen Elizabeth. He was the King of Scotland at that time. He succeeded to the English throne in 1603 as James I, because Queen Elizabeth did not have any children, which is why her cousin James VI, he became the monarch of England. With him becoming the monarch of England, there was this union of crowns. That is, he himself was a king of Scotland. Now he was ruling England and also Ireland, which is why there is this unification of England, Ireland and Scotland. The reign of James I is known as the Jacobean Age, beginning from 1603 till 1625. So even though there was this union between Ireland, Scotland and England, this perfect union, and King James hoped that this would be a perfect union, but it unfortunately was not. Scotland and England, they kept their own parliaments, separate parliaments. They had their own separate laws and they also minted their own coinage. So even though the monarch of England, Scotland and Ireland is one, there were separate parliaments, there were separate rules, there were separate currencies, separate laws. After James I and James VI, Charles I, he became the monarch of England. With the succession of Charles I, then begins the Caroline Age from 1625 till 1649. Now Charles I, he quarrelled with the Parliament of England. He levied unfair taxes without the consent of the Parliament. His religious policies were also strict, disputable and extreme. He believed in the divine right of kings and thought he could govern according to his own conscience. People perceived his actions as unjust, as those of a tyrannical absolute monarch. Which is why from 1642, even when Charles I was the monarch of England, civil wars started. This civil war was a very violent, very bloody civil war that happened in the history of England. And there were battles, there were wars which were fought between the parliamentarians, also known as the Roundheads. It was a sort of a way how they used to wear their caps. And the parliamentarians, they supported the Parliament of England and Scotland, and the royalists. Royalists were also known as Cavaliers because they supported the monarch of England at that time, that is Charles I. So there was this direct conflict between the supporters of the monarch and the supporters of the Parliament. What eventually happened was that Charles I was executed in 1649. He was absolutely executed. And then his son, Charles II, he ran away, he was exiled, and the Republican Commonwealth was established. This is the only time when England was without a monarch. Remember, England still has a monarch even right now at the time of my speaking. So, Oliver Cromwell, he became the Lord Protector of the Commonwealth. He cannot be considered as a monarch of England, which is why he is known as the Lord Protector of England, of the Commonwealth rather. And he was ruling England. He was looking after the affairs of the England from 1649 till his death in 1660. The Republican Commonwealth, it ended in 1660 with the restoration of Charles II as the monarch of England. So from 1660 onwards, the Restoration Age begins, and generally speaking, Elizabethan age ends. So this is what I wanted to share about the political and a little information about the religious condition of England at that time. I would now like to talk a little about the social conditions of England. The first point is Renaissance. Now, Renaissance is a French word. The origin of this word is in French language. The meaning of this word is rebirth, revival, or reawakening. Renaissance began in Italy around the 14th century, and there was this revival of ancient classical mythology, literature, painting, sculpture, and also architecture. Especially in literature, Petrarch and Boccaccio, they are considered as the pioneers of the revival of classical literature, also known as humanism. Humanism includes all aspects of the study of humans, that is medicine, philosophy, psychology. Slowly and gradually, Renaissance, which began in Italy, it spread to Germany. Then from Germany, it spread to Spain, then to France, to Netherlands, and ultimately it reached England somewhere around the middle of the 16th century. Now, there are a couple of important events associated with Renaissance which I would like to talk about. The first is the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The Ottoman Empire, they defeated the Byzantine Empire. Byzantine Empire, that is the Roman Empire. So, after the defeat of the Roman Empire, Islam spread in Europe. Now, Islam is gradually spreading in Europe, and we all know that Renaissance began in Italy. So what eventually happened was that after the fall of Constantinople, several Greek and non-Greek intellectuals, they fled the city. They fled the city of Constantinople. They fled the city and they took with them the culture, the tradition, the literature, and the various arts that they are aware about. They took with them the vast riches of ancient art and knowledge, and their migrating to different places, their migration from Constantinople to Italy and to various other nations of Europe is what ignited the Renaissance. The second event that I would like to talk about is the European invention of printing by movable type. Now, the European invention of printing, it came into being around somewhere around 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg of Germany. This was a very advanced method of printing which was done by movable components. Handcrafted manuscripts was replaced by mass produced books. We are all aware about the power, the influence of literature. So when the manuscripts were replaced with mass produced books, several people were enlightened by it. Several people, they gained information, they gained knowledge after they read information through various books. So this is also a very important event associated with Renaissance. Printing, the technology, the modern advanced technology in printing that began from 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg. The first printing press was set up by William Caxton in England in 1476. The second point about the social conditions of England is the growth of science. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus, he argued that the sun is at the center of the universe. Now, this was quite revolutionary during its time because earlier, the theory which was endorsed by the church was that the earth is at the center of the universe. So now, a new scientist, that is Copernicus, is arguing that the sun is at the center of the universe, which means that he is challenging what has already been established by the church. Apart from this discovery, several other discoveries of the planets by Kepler, by Galileo, they also took place at that time. So Europe collectively was becoming more and more scientifically advanced. Reason and rationality, they became the crucial driving force to find explanations for human behavior, for physiology, and also for appearance. This ultimately led to the reduction of the influence of religion. We are all aware that religion and science, they don't always go hand in hand. So during the Elizabethan age, or a few years before the Elizabethan age, the dominance of science started. Exploration. Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. Commercial transactions began from the 15th century onwards. Commercial transactions between various nations of the world. English people, they went to West Indies and also to South Africa, and they returned with silver, gold, pearls, silk, spices, etc. With this exploration, slowly and gradually, it will also lead to imperialism. Fourth point is the growth of nationalism and patriotic spirit. Now, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, it took place in 1588. Several countries of Europe, they were at conflict, they were at loggerheads with each other, especially to establish supremacy over other parts of the world. So England was waging war against France, against Spain, and vice versa. So what happened with the defeat of the Spanish Armada? Spanish fleet had roughly 130 ships. They attempted to invade England in 1588. But the English Navy, they were able to successfully drive them away. Hence, there is this growth of patriotism and nationalism. Earlier, it was considered that the Spanish fleet, they were the most powerful fleet of Europe. But now, with the defeat of the Spanish Armada, the supremacy of English Navy was established. England became the most powerful force on the seas. Commercial gains. In 1600, a charter was granted to the merchants for foreign trade. Elizabeth I, she had sanctioned this charter, and with the sanctioning of this charter, it led to the establishment of the East India Company. Eventually, England became the greatest empire in the world. Individualism. There was emphasis on a lot of individualism during the Elizabethan age. Individualism was also a major feature of Greek literature. The result of this individualism was that the Renaissance men did not care for authority and were free in making their own decisions. Individualism is always important for the growth, for the development of a human being, for the development of human race. So, individualism is also observed during the Elizabethan age. Civility. A significant feature of individualism was the insistence of well-rounded man. An accomplished courtier of Renaissance should be able to fencing, the sport of fencing, should know the sport of fencing, should be able to ride a horse, should be able to read Latin language, Greek language, should also know how to organize a siege on a city, and lastly, this well-rounded man should also know how to write and dedicate a sonnet to a lady. So there was this rise in courtesy and manners. We are all aware how England is famous, is acknowledged for this gentleman or lady attitude. It stems from here, it stems from civility. So all over Europe, there was this growth in courtesy books which tries to help in terms of how to eat, how to talk, how to command yourself in a social situation. One particular example of a book is Courtier, which is written by Castiglione. Gender during Elizabethan England. Elizabethan England was extremely patriarchal. Husband or father was at the top of the hierarchy. Women were not given that much freedom, that much importance. Unfortunately, they did not enjoy the freedom as compared to the men during the Elizabethan age. So this is an irony, because even though England at that time was governed by a female, unfortunately, the social conditions of England were such that they were absolutely patriarchal in nature. So women were supposed to maintain silence in public sphere. They were not allowed, they were not supposed to express themselves. They were instructed to practice chastity, to be pure. Gender roles were defined in various books which were written at that time. Some of the books which I would like to quote, they are the Book of Common Prayer and the Laws, Resolutions of Women's Rights. So it is unfortunate to say that Elizabethan age, during the Elizabethan age, the social conditions of England did not give equal freedom, equal opportunity to women. And the last point that I would like to talk about regarding the social conditions of England is Elizabethan age is known as the age of drama and the age of poetry. So Elizabethan age was an age of great thought and great action, appealing to the eyes as well as to the imagination and intellect. We all know that with individualism, with civility, with Renaissance, with the growth and development of science, there is an emphasis on thought and also an action. Now this growth of thought and action, which type of literature would justify this growth of thought and action? So at that time, literary persons, they felt that there are only two literary forms which can justify the representation of the social conditions of England, the representation of Enlightenment, the representation of Renaissance, which is drama and poetry. So only a couple of literary expressions, they expressed the whole man, that is the thought of the man, the feelings of the man, the action of the man, and the character of a man. And the literary persons at that time felt that drama and poetry, they are the only effective genres which represents the development of a man. Which is why there is a tremendous growth, a tremendous output of drama and poetry during the Elizabethan age. Literature, it instinctively turned to drama and poetry during the Elizabethan age, and it brought rapidly to the highest stage of its development. With that, I come to the conclusion of my session. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University for inviting me to share my information with all of us. Thank you.